Now, again, thank Amy for taking the time and effort to put this exciting presentation together and take us through the process that Homecor goes through when it chooses a house. Where is it? Why is it being chosen? How does Amy take it through the whole process? And then also for this week, a special look at how Homecor offers a boost to homeowners who need to make repairs. And Homecor gets involved in choosing projects that will assist a homeowner through a support for that cost. Doesn't involve buying the house. Whereas, of course, with the houses they're going to renovate, they do buy them for a temporary period until they put the money in to take it forward. So Amy, I'm going to just turn it over to you and we'll take questions at the end.
All right, thanks. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Okay, great. So this, as you, I think most of you were here last week. So just wanted to take a minute to talk about what we covered last week. So my clicker isn't working. Fred? Can't get my clicker to work. And can't get the arrows to work either. Okay, thank you. All right, so a reminder that I'm Amy Alderink. Homecor is the nonprofit that I work for as executive director. I'm also a licensed builder and real estate broker. So the things that we're covering today, which Linda mentioned, are we're going to review a recent project that involved a very old late 1800s home. And then right next door was a vacant lot that we built new construction that the buyer is set to close this Friday. So because they're right next to each other and very close in time to each other, it was a good scenario to look at of new construction versus old. So we're going to look at that. And then we're going to talk about Homecor's grant program, which is a different thing than we do with renovations. So just a reminder, we have the two, Homecor has the two things that we do, the grants program, which helps homeowners who own their homes fix up their homes, and then renovations, which is where Homecor buys the distressed home, fixes it up and sells it. A review again of last week, we talked about Homecor in the 90s, 1996 was started because the group that was involved in revitalizing the downtown business district was concerned that all the development and all the good stuff was going to move north of town, where the mall and the outlet mall and all those things were going in. So they wanted to make sure that the homeowners around downtown were supported and able to fix up their homes. And then we talked about in the 2010s and kind of the recession of 2000, 2008, 2007, 8. For the housing recession, how there were a lot of homes that were bank owned. And so Homecor, we took that as our opportunity to just start and try, see what would happen if we bought a distressed home, fixed it up and sold it. So that's when we started that second part of Homecor, the renovations part. So last week we talked about our kind of 3 ground rules that we had when we started renovating homes, which was collaborate with others, like Jubilee Ministries, say no to funds when there were strings attached that made us operate not efficiently, and then just start. So not putting a whole lot of thought into what could go wrong, but why not just try it? We talked about how we selected those projects for renovation. So whether it was the value, that the home was much lower in value to those surrounding it, looked really bad, and was in a visible location like a corner or a main corridor like 16th Street, or if there was an investment that we wanted to make in the place around it like Washington Square, so where there was already investment in a commercial district or a park, and then a final criteria of if it was just a problem house. So if it had a lot of police calls or housing code violations repeatedly over the years, decades, half centuries in some cases. So, so then we talked the kind of the range of homes that we've worked on, these last 44 homes, which was the data that I pulled for the last 10 years. So our lowest sales price was 98, highest was 40 or 400, with the average at 191. And that took an average of $6,700 per home in donations needed to cover that gap or that investment. And then that's just a reminder of when you do 44, that's the 54 homes, but that's what it looks like when you just kind of keep at it. And then we talked about this housing needs assessment that's put out for Ottawa County, and then this was specific to the city of Holland. So we looked at the rental housing gaps that were identified, saying that they would want to see 463 total rental units created in the next 5 years. And then for sale housing, they would want to see 1471, with the majority of them, or the biggest clump in this range, which is where we operate. So one, I think, final review of last week was who buys our homes. So we sell them to owner occupants with a deed restriction in place, and that we sell them to however you usually buy a home. So conventional financing, that we are not the financers, which is another difference from Habitat for Humanity, that they hold the note and keep the loan for themselves. So keep pointing this at that like it makes a difference, but I don't think it does. So now we're starting today. So this is all the brand new stuff. So like I said, we this is East 18th Street, where we purchased a vacant home and a lot right next to it. So you see the house on the, you see the house, and then this was a 39-foot wide lot. So the typical city lot is more like 50 feet, so it was a little narrower than typical. But we bought both of those for $239, and we put a value of $189 at the home, and then we kind of split off $50,000 for the lot. That would be considered a very favorable rate right now. It's pretty hard to find anything for 50. But we had at the same time bought a lot on Harrison that was also 48. So we thought that was the best number to put on that. So it took us 6 months to renovate this house, and we sold it for $256. Our cost to do that was $272. So using the bad word that I'm not supposed to use, that was a loss of $16,000, or an investment in the neighborhood of $16,000. So if I was doing this as an investor to make money, not a smart way to use my money. So how that breaks down is in, is anyone from the like retail industry, where you have the soft goods and the hard goods? You know, I worked through high school and college at a ski shop, and you know, the soft goods were all the coats and the pants and the gloves, and then the hard goods were the skis and the holes. So in real estate or in building, we talk about soft costs versus hard costs. So the way to think of hard costs is sticks and bricks. So that's the stuff that shows up on the site, and somebody shows up and puts it together, and it stays there, and you can see it, and you can touch it and smell it and all that. Soft costs are those things that you can't really touch. So it's your real estate commissions, your transfer taxes when you sell the house, closing costs, property taxes, your insurance that you need to carry while you're building that home. So how well, I didn't do the math, but how that 272 compared to the 239, taking out the lot, worked was $83,000 total that it took us to renovate that. And so how that played out was $20,000 in soft costs, and then $63,000 in the sticks and bricks. The house was in decent shape. Like it could have, with a few little electrical upgrades, been rented out, so, which is pretty stringent in the city that you have to put a rental, to get a rental certificate, it has to be inspected and pass a lot of things, so it can't have peeling paint, it can't have unsafe electrical. So it was in decent shape, but we still got on that slippery slope. Does anyone know what slippery slope of remodeling I'm talking about? Yeah, where you open up a wall of paneling that was maybe put up in the 70s and you think, this won't be a problem, we just need to take that old wood paneling off, and then you find out why the wood paneling was put up. And it's never a good reason. So we got on that slippery slope of taking some coverings off the walls, finding a lot of scary electrical, like extension cords plugged into things, and so I think it was about $6,000 worth of electrical later. We started putting it back together. Yeah, it just always, as simple as you think you can keep it, it never stays simple. So on the left is our before, and then on our right is the after. So we kept the aluminum siding and just painted it. This was another slippery slope, so the side porch was a storm door with just storm windows. And we took those out and thought we could just kind of swap something in its place, and it turned into a complete tear it off and start over. So we have all new doors, windows, walls, insulation to meet code, even though it's not a conditioned space. So all kinds of fun stuff. And then the lot and the house previously shared a driveway. So on an empty lot, there was a house until about 7 years ago, and then it was torn down. And they shared a driveway. Even on that 39-foot wide lot, we had room to fit 2 driveways side by side. So we thought that was more marketable, that somebody could say this driveway is mine and this driveway is mine, even though they were stuck together. So another big cost was, about $6,000 tearing out the old driveway and putting a brand new one in. And that's 9 foot wide with now another 9 foot wide driveway next to it. So it looks really nice. I don't know that many people get real excited about concrete, but it does look nice. So it's not like cool new countertops or a new refrigerator, but and then these are some.
There's a garage in the back.
Yes. So the house did have a single stall garage, and that was stayed. So inside, we have the dining looking to the front. We had some cool architectural arches, and then that same space, but looking the opposite direction towards the kitchen. And then it was, we finished it just before Christmas last year, so did a little staging of it for the holidays. Brand new kitchen. This was the owner's bedroom to the front of the house. All right, so the next was the lot next door. So the lot next door, we again signed that starting point of $50,000 towards the lot. And we sold the home and are closing on it Friday for $290,000. And then our cost for that new home is $294,000. So after that $16,000 loss on the last one, I was hoping to make it up on this one, and I didn't. So we'll talk about why that was in the future slides, but yeah, I should probably be fired by now, but I was trying to make money, but I have a nice board. So how did that shake out? Again, $23,000 in those soft costs, and that's usually just a percentage of your sales price. So you're paying a certain percentage of the sales price for transfer tax and all of that. And then $221,000 was the hard cost, just the sticks and bricks. And then $50,000 for the lot, so that totals the 294. So what does $294,000 get you? So a reminder that these are actual builder numbers, so there's no margin, no profit, there's nothing added to these. So this is nobody making any money. So what this is showing is that new driveway with a hole dug in the ground next to it. So does anyone get real excited about that? So what that cost to get to this hole in the ground was $78,500. And the way those numbers work is it costs $2,500 for a building permit. And that's based on the price, the value of the home. So if the home was $500,000 estimated value, would be roughly twice that and so on. So a permit from the city is $2,500 and that pays for them to review your plan, hopefully approve it, come out for 1,001 inspections. Not really, but I think there's about 14 that they come out for. So the footings, the foundation, the framing, the house wrap, yeah, the rough plumbing, rough and mechanical. And then $6,000 for your sewer and water hookup fee. So that is actually very low for this house because a house was already there. So it technically already had a tap for both of those things. I mentioned this other lot that we bought at the same time is also closing actually next Monday. And that one was $26,000 because it had never had a tap before. So what does it's called a trunkage fee or a water tap, sewer tap, what does that get you? Nothing. So that is just paying the city for the ability to hook up to their system. So they're not coming out and doing anything, they're not tapping it for you, you don't see them except for them to inspect it to make sure you did it right. So after you pay the city to hook it up, then you pay your subcontractors the $15,000 in this case to do the work. So that's to dig, lay the pipe, hook up the electric service, the actual work and the materials to do that. And then we had to cut one tree down. Of course, the lot had one tree and it was where we had to put the house. We had a little survey just to make sure we were putting it in the right place and then to dig this hole. So that is with the cost of the lot, $78,500 worth of stuff. Going another step further, I just added this next item. So now you drive by and we have a foundation. So $33,000 can buy you a foundation, the concrete basement floor, and then the backfill, which is pushing the dirt back up against the house. So $33,000. So now if you drive by at this stage and there's a foundation in the ground, we spent $111,500. Next step, you drive by and the house is framed in, has windows and doors. That costs $44,000 for that, those items. Oh, and the roof. So now we're at $155,500. Again, these are real numbers, what we're paying subcontractors, what we're paying for lumber. So you can probably start to see where building a house for $155,000. It's hard. In fact, I don't know how you do it. So next, we added the siding. We did the rough electric and plumbing and the heating and cooling. We insulated the inside and we have drywall up. So $55,500, we're at $211,000. So it looks great from the outside, it's weather tight. The inside has the stuff behind the walls and the drywall is up. But we're at 211. Now, we're done. So that last 60,000 is all the stuff that most people actually care about, because it's the fun stuff. So it's the cabinets, it's the trim and doors, it's the floor coverings, it's the counters, it's the appliances, it's the faucets and the light fixtures and all the things that people want to pick out and have fun with. That was our last 60,000 of the 271. So, looking at these kind of side by side, so we purchased the old for 189. The new is just the lot value. The sales price was 256 versus 290 for the new. The renovation costs for the old were total 272, meaning that's what we had into it, not what we spent on renovations, but all in 272 versus 294. What our investment is for each of those then. And then a big difference is timeline, 6 months versus 13 months for the new. 6 months, we start the clock from the day we close. So the day we buy it to the day the customer closes and hands us the money. So if you bought a house and you go through the whole getting a loan, the title insurance, all of that, you know that's usually at least a month. So there's, in this case, I think there was about 6 weeks where the house was sold, just not closed. So we're not working on the house 6 months. It was probably a 3-month, probably could have been done quicker, but we weren't moving real quick at the time. But then 13 months, that was about as quick as we could move with new construction. So what we have to do with new construction in the downtown neighborhoods is, even if it's not in the historic district. So the historic district is a sub area within our area where you have one set of rules. But then our whole area has what's called infill review. So they want the new home that you build to blend in with the existing homes. So they're not telling you what type of windows to use or what type of siding, but they do have specific criteria about height and height of the front porch above the street, so that you're not up here while your neighbors are down there, so that you don't build like a house with a garage to the front when everybody else has their garage to the back. So you have to go through that. That's a 30-day waiting period from the time you turn in your application. So you have to do that. That's a month. You have to design the home, send it to plan review from the city. That was another month. So there's a lot of pre-planning and approvals for the new construction versus the old. And then, yeah, just your time to build it and all the inspections. So in new construction, I think if I count them up, there are 14 inspections that you need to have along the way. So the footing inspection, you dig your hole, you form your, actually there are 2 for the footings. So you dig your hole, you put the forms in the hole that says this is where I'm gonna put my footings. So before you pour them, they come out and say, yep, that looks like where you should put your footings and looks like you did your forms correctly. Then after they're poured, you have to put in another request that says, now they're poured, can you come and look at them? So then they come and look at them. So sometimes that process is a day. Sometimes it's a week and a half. So you might request an inspection and they can come out very quickly. Sometimes they're very backed up because there's only a certain number of staff and it just depends what else is going on. So sometimes that can be a week and a half. So then if you multiply that by 14 different steps and you can't call in your rough building inspection until your electrical inspection has been approved and your plumbing and your mechanical. So even if you know all those things are gonna happen, you can't request it until they're done. So then you may have another week and a half where you can't do anything while you just wait. So that is a frustration. I don't know that I know how to do it differently, except wish that when we're licensed and have a good track record, that you could send pictures or just could have your word taken for it, that it really is done, and it's done how you wanted it done. Comparison between the two, the garage, was there for the old. We did not build a garage for the new. So that 290 sales price, there is no garage on a new one. And the reason for that, we know everybody loves their garage, but whoever bought the house may want a little garage, or they may want the largest garage you could possibly fit on that lot. Or because it's in the central neighborhoods, or actually in the city of Holland, everywhere it's allowed to build an accessory dwelling unit. So somebody could build a granny flat in their backyard, or a garage, or a apartment above the garage. So there were just too many configurations that we didn't dare guess what people would put the value on. So we thought it was one way for the future buyer to kind of customize it to what they would want to use their garage for. So there was a reason why we didn't do a garage, and that was it. The old house had a very bad basement that you would not want to go down to unless you had to flip a breaker. So it wasn't anywhere where you were hanging out. I mean, it was dry and fine, but it was short, and versus the new one has a brand new basement with a window well, so you could put a bathroom down there, put a bedroom down there, put a family room down there. So big selling point for that added square footage down the road. Oops, there, great basement. So the old house was 3 bedrooms, 1 bath at 954 square feet. The new house is 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, one of those baths being an owner's suite and ensuite bathroom, and at 1440 square feet. So you can see the price per square foot for the old versus the new, that it was more economical at price per square foot to go new. I met with the buyer of the new house last night to do a walkthrough, and she shared the appraisal with me that she got. And I mentioned last week, I think, that we set our houses to what we feel is market value. It's hard to set a market value on a new home because there's very little to compare it to in our neighborhoods. And yeah, how will a buyer value no garage versus a garage? And is a great basement adding $8,000 worth of value, $12,000? No value because they don't need the storage or the space. So we set the price of $290 before it was finished and sold it. And the buyer shared her appraisal with me last night, and I want to guess what it came in at. 310?
320.
320?
350.
350? It was 328. So, yeah, I should have waited and sold it for more. But the buyer is great. Again, if I had a boss who was relying on me to make a profit, that would not be a good answer. But the buyer is really nice and she'll have a great,
Happy.
yeah, she is so happy. She was talking about all the different types of cookies she was gonna bake for her new neighbors, and she actually works for another nonprofit in the neighborhood called 360, so she was all excited about owning a home right in her mix. So it's absolutely the right buyer for the right house, and that was her price range. So if we couldn't sell it for $290, she would not be a homeowner there. So I feel good about that. Don't feel great about the $4,000 and the $16,000 that were invested. Well, no, I feel good about that. This is where I was gonna switch to the grants. So we could take this time to do questions on the renovations or the comparison of the two.
How many want to take questions first on the housing part, of building a house part of this, and then switch to the grant program in a little bit and go through the questions? Okay, that's.
So, you don't consider, just taking down some of the old houses and building new? Would that get you expensive?
So that is a good question. When I mentioned my dad shows up at a lot of jobs and just says, why don't you just take them down? So the problem is I can't buy anything for close to 50. So even the worst of the worst house that I can possibly find in this market is 196 is the least expensive house that I've looked at in the last year. So I can't start from 196, pay $20,000 to scrape it clean and start at that point. So that's the problem, because there's a lot of homes when I get done that I see that price per square foot and say, you know, it would have been much more economical to build a new design versus an old. But I just can't find anything to start and scrape.
I think leave this up on the screen for a few minutes because I think there are a lot of comparisons that give you interesting questions. Overall, for the city as a whole, you know, what is the incentive to fix old houses rather than build new houses? A lot of people ask that question. And here is just a clear example of the difference, where some buyers would choose the new house in a minute, and others would like the charm and the idea that it was built in 1896, and the idea that it still has a little flavor of that older house to give it charm, and you know, that idea. So your thoughts on that?
Amy, how does Holland compare in terms of their cost? When you were talking about permits and then you were talking about inspections and everything,
Yeah.
seems quite high, but how do we compare with the cities around us?
That's a good question. So if you're in the Board of Public Works service area, you're paying basically all the same fees. That is pretty much the same as far as hooking up to sewer and water. The gas company, like Sunco, it's all the same, and that is actually not very expensive at all. Permits are pretty comparable, so there's not a whole lot of variation. There are some counties and municipalities that tend to make you hear the horror stories. So I only work in the city of Holland, but when I get together with family members or other builders, we get to compare horror stories. So building inspectors, municipal officials really can make a huge difference on whether you want to do work in that area or not. So even if the costs are the same, you look at the cost of that stress and that time that they could take to do things, and you say, So I will say that everybody at the city of Holland that I ever interact with does their job very well and is very nice and personable. But they definitely, dot their i's and cross their t's, and you're not going to sway them to just be able to send them a picture or something to make life easier. So, but I'd say costs are pretty comparable.
I have a question about the lot size.
Mhm.
39 feet is not much.
No,
And so, assuming that you put a 9-foot driveway pad in there too.
Yeah.
And now you're down to 30 feet.
Yeah.
And you got setback on the other side.
Yep.
5 feet?
Yep.
Okay. So you're down basically 24
Mhm.
wide house. Okay. It's okay. I'm just,
so this.
Yeah.
So we first designed with Ostrich this house, which is 20 feet wide. Got it into permitting. It was there for 2 weeks. And then they called and said, you missed the part in the code where it says houses in this area have to be 22 feet wide. So we added this fun bump, and they said that was okay. So the house is 22 feet wide, and yes, there's then a 9-foot driveway and there's a 5-foot side yard on that side.
so you didn't have to get a waiver. That's
No.
my final question.
No, so we made it all fit, but it was the absolute skinniest house that we were allowed to build.
Amy, I'm just trying to get my head around this because it sounds like even though there is a housing shortage across the nation, I'm sure it's the same in this area. At least it was when I researched it a couple of years ago. It doesn't seem as though the city, even though they're gonna benefit from, improving and saving neighborhoods, increasing the tax base of these houses, it doesn't seem like they're making the path smooth for people like you. Are there any incentives at all, with the local municipality?
No.
Hmm.
No, so there used to be, we called it the year of the garage for a while, and then it turned into a couple of years, but, the city set aside some general funds. It was when, they formed a task force called the Neighborhood Improvement Committee, of which I was on. And the whole premise was there's a lot of people without garages who would like to have a garage. And it was our way of saying the appraised value of a garage is $8,000. It costs $13,000 to build one. How could we promote that? And the city said as a little boost and to encourage, and this was when it was really hard to talk somebody to move into our central neighborhoods. So we don't have that problem. So it was, how do we attract those suburban type people to our neighborhoods? And it was like, let's publish and provide these funds for a garage. So the city put aside general fund money up to $5,000 per homeowner to use towards a garage. And then Homecor, we contributed, if it was the right income and everything, we would contribute our $3,000. So then they were well on their way to a new garage. That program went away because it was general funds, so it was, you either use it that way or you use it a million other ways that it's needed for whatever program. So now the only way the city really could help us is if they had funds from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, which they do. They use those for their home repair program. But there isn't anything that's kind of loose and wiggly enough to help with these situations. Because again, those funds then would have all the strings attached, and that often makes it even less affordable to build. And then we've approached the city of, okay, that sewer hookup fee, do you really have to charge us that? And they said, well, who would you like us to say yes to, that we can say, yes, we'll do that for free for you, but we're gonna have to, say no to whoever else. So I get it, that it's hard to say, well, we'll look the other way, or we'll get to yours quicker than them, and so it's hard to, I think, just create something specific that benefits us.
With the cost of housing and the lack of affordable housing in this area, more and more people are building garage houses in their backyard. Do you have to have a special permit or a special size lot in order to do that? How does that happen?
Yes, so the question about, they're called accessory dwelling units. So the city of Holland has their, Universal Development Ordinance, UDO, I think that's what it stands for. So on the city's website and in their whole big long codes, there's a section specifically on accessory dwelling units. And it says if you build them, out on South Shore, these are the rules. So you're allowed this size per, as a percentage of your house square footage. If your lot is this big, you can put it here. So each district, so the downtown neighborhoods have their own set of rules of where it can be put, the setbacks from the lot lines. But they are allowed everywhere in the city. So if you would design it exactly to fit what's in the code, you can do it by right, it's called. So you can just go in for your permits and do it. If it doesn't fit any of those criteria that are very clearly spelled out, then you have to get a variance to do it, and which you may or may not be granted to do. But that is one way, if anyone's looking at wanting to do something personal to increase affordable housing, if you have the ability and want to build a accessory dwelling unit and you live in the city, you should be allowed to do it if you follow all the criteria. And I mean, they're called granny flats or mother-in-law suites. I actually have one in my backyard and we moved into the house during COVID. So it turned into we called it our quarantine house. So every time my college kid got sent home because he was exposed to something, he would move into the quarantine house in the backyard and then we worked from there when we couldn't go into offices. And so it is one of those transitional spaces that now my 21-year-old lives back there, but yeah, it can be your exercise room. It can just kind of change as the times change. And we even have a council person who I think now lives in her tiny house and rents out her main house. So she built that in the last 2 years and was downsizing, so she moved into the small house and rented her big house. So
Or you could banish your juvenile delinquents to the garage when they misbehave, but that might not work out the way you planned it.
yeah, the dog house, yeah.
I just wondered, how large can they be, and how many are there in Holland now?
As far as the accessory dwelling units, I don't remember the max, but it was I think it was 25% of the square footage of your home. So if you had a 2,000 square foot, then it was footprint, so not up, if you had a 2,000 square foot ranch, you could build a 500 square foot tiny house. And there was a max square footage, but I don't remember what it is, but yeah.
Are you able to tell us what the property taxes are gonna be on that little house?
No.
I
Sorry.
know they're high in Holland, that's why.
Yeah, yeah, they are, yeah, the tax rate for the city is higher than the surrounding townships. So I can't do that math in my head, but the state equalized value will be roughly 200,000. So it'd be 41 mils of 200,000. That's 6,000-ish. 5 or 6 a year, maybe. Yeah.
So maybe about 6,000 on this house.
That's my best guess. Math is not always my thing.
That's a big uptick for the city.
Yeah.
Do you see any housing innovations that might lower the cost of new construction, for instance, 3D printed houses or modular construction, that type of thing in Holland?
Yeah, I've been, a builder for a long time, 25, 30 years. And it seems like we've always looked at all the things, and then, you talk to Jim Bob, your framer, about doing something new, and they say, well, I can just stick build it like we've always done for, that same cost. And so it seems like we always go back to what's familiar. So I can't say, so when I say, as a small nonprofit, we're kind of willing to try anything once. So we do, but we haven't encountered anything that has been just, the answer. So Jubilee has done manufactured houses. We have not, just because we mostly done all remodels except the 4 new houses. So Jubilee did some manufactured homes. The prices on the front end looked like they were going to be great. It didn't turn out to be a difference maker in the end, so they shifted away from that. On the 3D printed houses, I only know what I watched on TV, and that looks really cool. How that gets put into place in our climate and in our, because the ones that I saw were printed with concrete, like a big toothpaste thing that ran around and squirted concrete and kept going around and around until your house got built. So and they actually looked really cool. I thought that the style was neat. But how we do that in cold climates, I don't know, and I don't know how you get somebody to invest in that equipment and make it happen in real life, but those do look really interesting.
I did notice it in looking at some information that the city is the one who tore down the house next door 7 years ago. It was vacant for 7 years, but one of the neighbors said, well, there was a house there.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, a house that you would expect there. So what would be the reasons that the city would end up tearing down a house?
The city tore down that house just because it was unsafe and had been ordered to have, so it was condemned. It had years and years of, trying to work with the owner to make the improvements and they just didn't get made. So then the city finally, went to court and had the approval to tear it down.
Okay,
So,
and have the approval to tear it down while the owner was still living there. And then you could
I
just
think
do
they had moved on by that point
Okay.
because it was so unsafe.
So it was vacant when it was condemned.
Yeah,
Uh,
but that is very, very, very rare.
Yeah.
That's not an everyday thing by any means.
And going back to the original project where you have one needy house and one vacant lot, the needy house, you mentioned as you introduced it, that it was eligible for a rental certificate the way it was.
Mhm.
So if you did nothing, then that would stay a rental home in that condition, just on and on and on.
Yeah.
So that controls the decision too, which is better, letting that turn over as a rental, the way it was,
Mhm.
and then build something next door when
Yeah.
it required the whole thing.
And it
and-
looked on the surface, it looked like a fine home. It was just a lot of things hidden that is pretty shocking that it didn't burn down. So,
Can you back up to that picture of the old and the new on that there? If you look at the porch that's gonna turn into one of the nightmares, you can see that the small side slanting roof is cutting off a little piece of the doorway. I mean, the door won't even fit under the roof.
Yeah.
So
well, they made it fit.
it made it fit, yeah, by law. And when you got in there to figure out what was the hook or by crook, it was really bad news.
Yeah.
Um,
So that, yeah, when we tore this wall down, we thought, well, that's what's supporting the roof. And it turns out the beam that ran this way, that wall should have been built under, was not built under the beam. So the beam was just resting kind of on the door that, and then the load was carried not where it needed to be
Yeah.
carried, so.
so while you're,
Yeah.
you know, pounding your head because the first 9,000 went straight into the porch or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, the porch is part of the charm of the house, and it really isn't of any house if it has a porch at all. You want it to be cute, and I think you did wind up with something that looks cute. And that
Yeah.
lends itself to landscaping or somebody, putting a little outdoor space there or something. Was there room, do you ever put a patio in the back, since people are so patio crazy today? Or is that something that also the owner can do that for not a big investment, so you at Homecor will not probably do that?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I would do if I were living there, and a lot of things that I thought would, appeal to buyers. But when you get to the end of the job and you just keep seeing where your number keeps going, you have to just say no at some point. So that slippery slope of remodeling where you just have to stop it at some point, that's where we get when we get to the end.
Another interesting point is that this house is historic, built in 1896, but it's not in a historic district. So it doesn't come in under the special requirements that are imposed
Correct.
on the exterior of something that's in the historic district.
Yep.
And aren't there a lot of houses in Holland that are historic, and therefore you would like to see them maintained if it makes sense?
Okay. Yep.
And this is an example.
Yep.
As for example, why would we remove the shutters on this house?
Yeah, so in the historic district, if we were trying to make changes to this, it would be very difficult. So these shutters are the little like 1980s style plastic, that don't cover the window like they're supposed to, and they don't operate and they're just nailed on there. But because they're there, we would have to get approval to remove them or do anything different if we were in the historic district. Since we're not in the historic district, we took them off, painted the house. Same with the porch, even though what's there is definitely not original. To make any changes to that, we would have had to go to that additional step of the historic district, which would have been at least 45 days to get anything approved like this. So for this, to make this change going from that, it's a new door, it's new vinyl windows, it's board batten siding. Probably, maybe would have been approved by the committee. I don't know if that would have been approved by the historic committee. So we still had to go for a building permit and show them how we were gonna build it and what we were gonna build out of. But it was just, does it meet building code? It wasn't, does it meet any, we could have made it as ugly as we wanted to, and it would have been just, does it meet building code? Versus the historic district would have had to, decide whether this was appropriate for that era of home, so.
I wondered, the porch, could you use that square footage as part of the living space?
Interestingly, it's not conditioned space, so there was another exterior door, before you walked into the house. So they don't consider it living space, but yet, because we took it apart, we had to build it back to code as if it were living space, so we had to add additional electric and other stuff. But it's not considered livable, habitable space. All right, were there any questions we need to?
Are we ready to go ahead and talk about the grant program? Okay.
So grants, we have, again, this is the program that we started in 1996, where we give grants to homeowners. So the one that we started with was the basic Central City. So that's grants up to $3,000, and it's your major stuff. So it's not, you want to put more in-style countertops in, or you want new appliances. It's roofs, siding, windows, to correct unsafe electrical, to get a working furnace or a working water heater, all those big things. Most of the time they're exterior things, so you would be able to see the new roof, see the new siding, see those. A couple of years ago, we put into place the next two, which were curb appeal grants and energy efficiency grants. So basic Central City grants are very dependent on income, and we'll talk about those income ranges next. But the curb appeal grants and the energy efficiency grants were more for people that maybe made a little bit higher income, but still needed a little encouragement to make an improvement or to make a project move forward. So curb appeal grants, it's not that we're gonna buy you a couple of bushes. It's we were running into people who were spending $20,000 to redo their front porch because it was falling off the house or so deteriorated, but their income was too high that there wasn't any money available for that. So this was just our little boost of saying, here's $1,000, thanks for what you're doing to make your house look better. So it requires a one-to-one match from the homeowner. So every dollar they put in will match up to $1,000. So we see these a lot, with, people who are redoing front porches. Sometimes we use them to justify tree removal because there are no grants available for trees to be removed. And everybody knows that removing a tree is an expensive thing. And if you don't remove it and it's dead and it falls on your house, that causes a lot of problems, as Walkers in the Woods people know. So we'll sometimes use that to help somebody remove a tree. And then energy efficiency grants, same thing. So maybe their income is a little too high to qualify for our $3,000 grant, but they're putting a bunch of money into making energy improvements to their home. So whether it's new windows or added insulation, basement insulation. And then the neighborhood grants is our newest grant. And that is, we had all these, 4 neighborhood groups that work in our area. So groups like East Core, West Core, Washington School of Neighbors, and Montello Park. And they had all the volunteers and the neighbors who like to do things together. And they get to talking and they realize that somebody really had a need and they had the people to do it, but they just didn't have any money to do it. And so we said, you're doing all the hard part. We'll give you some money to do that. And what it has turned into is a dumpster program. So who would have thought? But what that means is our neighborhood partners, those 4 groups I mentioned, will have a spring cleanup, a fall cleanup, sometimes other cleanups, and they'll ask us for funds for dumpsters. So we give them a $2,000 fund that they can just, instead of me going to my board, they can just email me and say, this is how we'd like to use $800. Can we do that? And I'll say, sure, because it's all been dumpsters. So they have all the people set up and they do it in a church parking lot or a vacant something, and everybody in the neighborhood brings their junk and throws it in the dumpster, and we pay for the dumpsters. So the neighborhood people are doing all the hard stuff and we're just providing some dumpsters. And that's not how we thought the money was gonna be used, but for the past 4 years, that's all it's been used for. And if you were gonna start a neighborhood group or a church group where you wanted to bring people together, I suggest dumpsters. So it's like getting around a campfire, but it's a dumpster that everybody has junk, and then you realize somebody needs to get rid of a couch, but they don't have a truck to haul the couch. So then another neighbor volunteers to go run to their house and grab the truck. We've even had like hashtags with the truck or the couch shoved in the back with people running behind holding the couch. So it turns into a whole community building thing. So dumpsters are the unifying thing. So home court income guidelines, we talked about last week when we looked at that chart on the housing needs and income brackets. We talked about this median family income. So that's well, I think we probably know what median is, but the amount that divides a population into 2 groups. So half of them make more than that, half of them make less. So it's established, these numbers are from Ottawa County where we operate, and it's based on census data. So the city has their home repair program, and that's funded by MISHDA, Michigan State Housing Development Authority. So they have very specific check boxes. There's no exceptions. So if you're a family of 2 and you make $70,900, you cannot use their program. So it's, I mean, there's no wiggle room. So that is the home repair program for city has to follow these guidelines, that you have to make 80% median family income or below to qualify for their grants program. So when I say we partner with the city often on grants, it's because we have that situation. So we have somebody who makes $500 more than the limit. So they need a $15,000 roof. They make $100 more than 80% of the median income. The city can't help at all. So now they have a $15,000 roof to take care of with, and we can give our $3,000 to at least get them partway down the road. And then it's often, they have that savings, they can get a home equity loan, they can sometimes finance it through the contractor. But we do not have very many rules that are as cut and dried because we are privately funded, meaning individuals, corporations, family foundations, just nothing that's a government program that says you have to do this, which means if our cutoff is 24th Street and somebody has a really good story on why they need help and they're on 25th Street, we can just say, close enough. So, and I just made a note to myself to mention it. So situational poverty, an example of that is somebody owns their home for 20 years, makes their payments, has major improvements, no problem up until that time. And then all at once, their car breaks down, they have a major medical expense, and then their roof just started leaking. So everything was going along just fine, and then this situation happened that made them unable to afford the repair that needs to happen. So it's not a choice. You can't just wait 5 years until you have some more saved up. It's the roof needs to be replaced. So I would say the majority of the people that I work with that are not qualified for the city's program, it is, we just ask them to tell us their story, like what's going on. It seems like your income would allow you to save up for this and make this improvement, and there's always a story of why they can't. So then I take those stories to my board once a month, and they say yes, no, maybe, so our annual report, which I have a couple of copies, and then it's also on our website. But this is a snapshot from that. So I prepare this report every November. So this is the numbers from last year, 2024. So last year, our grant requests were down as they are this year, and I'm not sure why that is. So the city of Holland's requests for their home repair program are also down, and putting our heads together, we have not come up with a good reason of why that is. But last year we gave out 29 grants. It's usually more like 45 to 60 grants that we do. So that was $51,000 that we gave to homeowners. The average grant was $1,700. So meaning some might have just spent $150 to fix us or replace a storm door, and then plenty that were $3,000 towards a new roof. The total contribution, I always like to see this number because we do require the homeowner to have some skin in the game. So our $51,000 was leveraged with $78,000 that the homeowner put in. And then I talked about how we often partner with the city of Holland. So that was $36,000 that we partnered with the Holland. So in other words, the city maybe put in 5, we put in 3, the homeowner put in 2. So the total project value was $162. So our 51 is typically a third of the total cost of the project when you look at it over the whole year. And that has been basically consistent since 1996. And it just always seems to work out that it's always about a third, with the rest being shared between the homeowner and the city of Holland. And then once in a while, there's another program that's thrown in there from Lakeshore Habitat for Humanity or the Community Action Agency or out of the county. But that's how the numbers shake out. And then here's my fun graph. So just like I showed the 54 homes for our renovations, this is what it looks like when you put a dot map together for all of the homes that we've given grants to since 1997. So
It's really amazing.
So that-
It's really amazing.
I keep looking at it, I should look this up. So that represents 825 grants. Some of them, because we've been around for 20 plus years, well, 20 years. No, yeah, 20 plus years. Some of them have been repeat customers. So, but that's 1.47 million, still that average of 1780. And then just a couple of things. So who do we give grants to? Just a reminder that it's only to homeowners. So it's not to landlords, to renters. It's only to homeowners. And then where it's only in our downtown neighborhoods. So the city's home repair program is citywide. So whether I live out on 32nd Street or Holland Heights, that's a citywide program. Our program, because we started with the idea that we needed to strengthen the downtown and the business district, we have stayed tight with our boundaries. And so it is just this kind of 8th to 24th. And then this is grassed up to Fairbanks over here. Lincoln. Yeah. And then this is the end. So, so if you need help and are a homeowner, what do? You can contact me. So we have a website, which is there, homecor.org. That's my number, my cell number. on Facebook and Instagram, and that's my email. So if you'd like to support us financially, I mentioned this last week, but the renovations program is its own thing with its own donors and investors. So what we raise money for, that we send out that report to people is for the grants program. So that's it goes directly to the homeowners who need help with their roof and have income constraints. And then if you'd like an annual report and we didn't get one, feel free to contact me. But if you go to our homepage, right on the website, the homepage has a button that says click here for your annual report or for the annual report, and you find it there as well. And what the annual report has is, we've heard from our donors over the years, it gets kind of long. And I always think I should just shorten it to a one pager, but our donors have given us feedback that they love the stories. So for all of the 29 grants, I write just a little paragraph that explains what the situation was, how the different funds came together to make the project move forward. And I think our donors would really like to see how that collaboration happens and how homeowners put skin in the game and how they remain in control of their project by going out to get their own bids. So that looks like we have a question from the
We do,
consumers.
we have a question from Lee who asks, who pays for bad hail damage?
The question of who pays for bad hail damage, I don't think I've ever had that request actually. So I think people must be getting good, insurance coverage for that. So we have, that does bring up an interesting one that we've seen more and more over the last couple of years is a lot of, homeowners may not have a problem with their roof, it's not leaking, but the insurance adjusters are apparently driving through the neighborhood and, then they get sent a letter that says we're dropping your insurance if you don't replace your roof. So we probably had 10 of those over the last 2 years that the homeowner isn't motivated to fix their roof, but the insurance adjusters are dropping them if they don't replace it. Then they try to shop other carriers and are given the same answer. So it usually is an older roof, but it's not causing a problem. We had the same thing with, stair railings. So, an adjuster will tell them that they're getting dropped from insurance if they don't add a stair rail or handrail to their front stairway. So we've helped with a fair amount of those. So, but I haven't had hail damage questions.
Is there a requirement that the work has to be done by licensed contractors? Or only that it has to meet code, or how do you handle that?
We can be flexible with that. So if they're going through the home repair program, because it's where the funding comes from, it's very specific that you need 3 competitive bids for the work. You don't have to necessarily choose the lowest bid, but the amount granted will be based on the low amount. And then they have to all be licensed, insured. The city checks all of that, so I don't have to do any of that verification. And then they have to do lead clearance tests for lead-based paint. When it's a curb appeal grant or an energy efficiency grant, those 1-to-1 grants will sometimes have homeowners who maybe even are contractors for a living. And we certainly don't want to discourage people from doing their own work and putting their own sweat equity in. So if a homeowner wants to do their own work, we allow that, and we usually just structure it as a rebate. So we need to see that the work is done, that it was done well, and then we'll give the money to rebate them for that material and I think why we did that was at one point, I think we were burned that we helped somebody buy their roofing, their shingles, because they were gonna do it themselves, and then the shingles, like a lot of homeowner projects, sat in their yard for 3 years before they got around to it. So then that put the rule in place of, okay, buy the shingles on your credit card or however, but as soon as you can get them installed, we'll refund you for that money. So we are pretty flexible with people doing their own work, or if it's not work that requires a licensed person, then they can certainly do it themselves.
And does the neighborhood appeal program include landscaping? If people just feel like their landscaping is a mess and they could increase their curb appeal amount, that could be a grant. It doesn't have to be the house itself.
So for curb appeal grants, we have approved landscaping. But they've shown us, a plan and, like it's a noticeable, you're gonna drive by it and say, wow. So like I said, we're not just gonna, give somebody $100 to buy mums. But yeah, or to plant a few tulip bulbs, but if they say, hey, we have to cut down this tree, we have to plant new street trees, we have to, and they have a whole plan of how it's gonna come together, then we have supported landscaping. Yes. Any other questions?
Overall, Amy, since you've been doing houses and grants to improve houses over the years, probably you, when you drive through the city, you can say, oh, I had in that one, and we did that one, and we did that one. Do you feel that once Homecor has helped someone upgrade their house, they keep it up and the porch doesn't look like it's crowded with sofas and chairs and it's their storage?
Yeah.
Or other things that just, make the house look shabby again. Do you feel that the homes that have been helped keep up their house once the good deed is done?
Yeah, I think, most everybody that I work with definitely has pride of ownership and wants to maintain their investment. Obviously, not everybody has the same taste as I do, and that's, you can't, you can't, what's the word I'm thinking of? You can't, mandate taste because my opinion of what looks good is not the same. So there are definitely houses that I drive by and go, huh. I don't know that I agree with that choice, but that's not my choice to make. But everybody is proud, I think, of their home that they own, and that they want to improve. Yep. And I will say there is that effect of when we take the worst house on the block, renovate it, put money into it, we do see that ripple effect down the block. So the person who lived next door to that home that was vacant for 47 years, if they all of a sudden see that that home that was vacant for that long is going up in value and is gonna look great, I think that improvement that they were putting off for a while all of a sudden comes to the top because they feel like that investment is worthwhile. And then just being in the neighborhood working, people on the block can stop by and ask questions. So that is our inroad to a lot of grants, is if we're working on the renovations, then, they'll stop and ask our siding people a question, or they'll stop and ask me questions. So it definitely is a ripple when we're working in a block. Did you have another question for Zoom?
She walked out, so
Okay.
ask them my turn.
Okay, well, I think that everybody is done with questions, so I appreciate everyone coming. Reach out to me if you have any questions or want to report or anything. It's starting to be fundraising season, so yeah, we'd love to keep doing this, so thank you.